I never thought silence could hurt this much. On the day I was supposed to be the happiest bride alive, the only sound I kept hearing was the echo of disappointment, because my parents never showed up. They said they were too busy, but I saw the truth in their absence. I wasn't their priority. I never was. I walked myself down the aisle that day, holding back tears, pretending the emptiness in the front row didn't matter. But it did. It shattered me, and that silence, that cruel, deafening silence, became the spark that would one day roar into something powerful. Because when they saw what I became, when they saw the $135,000 SUV parked outside their gate, they finally remembered who I was. Before we go deep, tell me in the comments, where are you watching from? I grew up in a house that looked perfect from the outside: white fence, trimmed garden, polite smiles. But inside, love was a competition. Every achievement was a scoreboard, and every mistake a weapon. My mother, Ellen, believed perfection was proof of worth. My father, Richard, was quieter, but his silence spoke louder than her words ever could. My sister, Hannah, was everything they wanted. Graceful, clever, obedient. She knew how to play the game. I didn't. While she was winning spelling bees and summer scholarships, I was the girl who read quietly in corners, who didn't make noise, who tried too hard to please, and was always told it wasn't enough. Smile more, speak less. Why can't you be more like Hannah? Those words became the rhythm of my childhood. By the time I turned 16, I'd stopped expecting praise. I just wanted peace. I worked part-time jobs while Hannah got everything handed to her. My parents said they were teaching me independence. What they were really teaching me was isolation. I still remember one Christmas when Hannah got a new car, shiny red, wrapped with a bow. I got a planner and a half-hearted, "You'll need this for college." My mother said, "We'd get you something bigger if you were more social, dear. You don't need a car to sit home and read." It wasn't the gift that hurt. It was the message that I wasn't worth being seen. Years later, when I met Daniel, I didn't believe in love. Not really. But he saw something in me that no one else did. He noticed how I listened, how I remembered small things, how I put others first. He used to tell me, "You don't need to prove your worth to anyone." For the first time in my life, I wanted to believe that. When he proposed, I called my parents first. My mother said, "That's nice, dear," in the same tone she'd use for the weather. My father asked if Hannah was invited. I told them of course she was. She'd be my maid of honor. My mother just sighed. "Make sure she wears something flattering. She's gained a bit of weight." Still, I hoped. I hoped they'd show up, maybe even smile for me. Because deep down, every wounded child still believes their parents will eventually choose them. The months leading up to the wedding were chaos. Fittings, vendors, payments, and silence from home. Not a single offer to help. No call to ask how I was doing. Daniel's family, on the other hand, treated me like gold. His mother took me dress shopping. His father called me daughter before I'd even said "I do." It was everything I'd ever wanted, and yet every kindness reminded me of what I didn't have. The night before the wedding, I sent one last text to my mum. "Please come. It would mean the world to me." She read it, never replied. The next day, the world felt still. A soft morning light spilling through the chapel windows, the scent of lilies in the air. Everyone was there. Everyone except them. I remember walking to the mirror, veil trembling in my hands, trying to steady my breath. Hannah stood beside me, quiet for once. She whispered, "Mom said she couldn't come. Dad's at work." I nodded, pretending I didn't hear the tremor in her voice. When the music started, my stomach twisted. I stepped into the aisle alone. No arm to hold, no father to give me away. Just me, walking through a sea of strangers and polite smiles. Every eye in the room noticed the empty seats in the front row. I smiled, like it didn't hurt. I whispered vows with a steady voice, even as my heart cracked open. I posed for pictures, laughed at speeches, danced to music that sounded too cheerful for how hollow I felt inside. But when the lights dimmed and the guests left, I sat on the edge of the bed in my white dress, staring at the city lights through the window, my makeup streaked with tears, my new husband asleep beside me, and me replaying every childhood moment that led here. Every time they'd made me feel invisible, every time I'd believed that if I worked hard enough, they'd finally love me. That night, I stopped being their daughter. I became my own person, and as the clock struck midnight, I made a silent promise to myself. One day, they'd remember me. Not as the daughter they pitied, but as the woman they should have been proud of. When people talk about healing, they make it sound peaceful. It wasn't healing for me. Began with rage, quiet, simmering rage that refused to be ignored anymore. I stopped waiting for apologies that would never come. I stopped trying to make myself smaller to fit their idea of who I should be. Daniel and I started our life together in a tiny one-bedroom apartment. The walls were thin, the bills were constant, and our savings were a joke. But that place, it was ours. It was built from love, not judgment. I worked 2 jobs, teaching during the day, cleaning offices at night. I'd walk home under flickering streetlights, too exhausted to cry, too stubborn to quit. Daniel always waited up for me, making late-night tea, saying, "One day, you'll own more than this. You'll build something they can't ignore." But life doesn't always reward good intentions. 6 months later, Daniel's company downsized. He lost his job. We fell behind on rent. And as if fate enjoyed irony, my mother called that week, not to check on me, but to brag about Hannah's baby shower. She said, "We'd invite you, dear, but you always make things awkward." It was the last straw. That night I told Daniel, "I'm done begging for scraps of love. I'm building something for us, for me." I poured everything into work. I started freelancing, designing online courses, mentoring students. I read books on finance, business, and psychology, anything to understand why people succeed and others don't. I learned to speak the language of money, the one my parents worshipped. Years passed, like chapters in a book I refused to close. Every obstacle became fuel. Every doubt became proof that I was still fighting. Slowly, I built a consulting brand, just me, my laptop, and endless nights. I took clients, small at first, then bigger ones. I reinvested every cent. Then one day, an email changed everything. A corporate firm in Chicago wanted to hire me as their private strategist. 6 figures. Benefits, travel. My hands shook reading it. That night, Daniel and I danced in our living room. It wasn't just about the job, it was about becoming someone unstoppable. As my business grew, so did my confidence. I started wearing the confidence my parents never gave me, tailored suits, sharp heels, red lipstick, that said, "I'm not afraid anymore." And when I bought my first car, a modest one, I smiled at the memory of Christmas, years ago when Hannah got hers wrapped in a bow. There was no bow this time, no audience, just me and the dealer shaking hands. But it meant everything. Years turned into a decade. My name began to mean something in my industry. I spoke at conferences, mentored young women who reminded me of my younger self, quiet, overlooked, but burning with potential. Daniel stood by me through it all. He'd smile and say, "You were always meant for more." But fate wasn't done testing me. Just when I thought I had peace, Daniel fell sick. A rare heart condition. The doctors said treatment would be long and expensive. I didn't flinch. I had the money now. The house, the savings, the power. I paid every bill, stood by his side, and when he recovered, I realized something profound. I'd become the protector, the provider, the strength I used to search for in others. And as I stood outside the hospital one morning, the city lights reflecting off my car's windshield, I whispered, "You did it! You're not invisible anymore." That night, I sat down at my computer and finally wrote something I hadn't dared to in years. An email to my parents. Short, cold final. Mum, Dad, hope you're well. I'm doing fine. Very fine. I bought a house last year, starting a new firm next month. I thought you'd want to know, just in case you ever remember, you have another daughter. No pictures, no begging. 2 days later, my mother replied. That's wonderful. Dear Hannah's husband just got promoted to manager. We're very proud. I stared at the screen and laughed. It wasn't bitterness, it was clarity. They'd never change, but I had, and that's when I made the decision, a quiet one, deliberate, to return home, not to reconnect, but to remind them, not with words, not with tears, but with silence loud enough to echo through their perfect world. It had been 11 years since I'd last driven down that road, the same cracked pavement leading to the white fence that once made me feel small. But this time, I wasn't the invisible daughter coming home for approval. I was the woman they tried to forget, returning in silence, power, and control. The day I came back to my hometown, the sun was low, burning gold across the hills. The air smelled of pine and nostalgia, the kind that used to sting. My SUV, sleek and silver, hummed quietly as I turned into the familiar cul-de-sac. Heads turned. Curtains shifted. I wasn't the girl who'd left with nothing. I was the woman whose success could no longer be denied. Their house hadn't changed. White siding, polished windows, the same perfect garden that screamed Ellen's pride. I parked right outside their gate, the engine's hum fading into a silence that felt deliberate. For a moment, I just sat there, hand on the wheel, heart steady. I thought of every night I'd cried for their love, every time they'd chosen Hannah's comfort over my existence. I'd buried that girl long ago. What remained was strength carved from pain. When my mother stepped outside, she froze, her pearl earrings glinted, but her expression faltered. She wasn't expecting me, and certainly not like this. Behind her, Hannah appeared with her perfect smile, her husband beside her, 2 children playing in the yard for a moment. I saw the life my mother always wanted on display. Then I realized something. It didn't shine as bright as it used to. Is that really you? My mother asked, clutching her sweater. I smiled. It's me. Her eyes darted to the car, the emblem, the shine, the statement. That's yours. I nodded. Yes, bought it last month. Thought I'd stop by before I leave for Europe. Her lips parted, words caught between pride and disbelief. My father came to the door next, older, thinner, but still wearing that same unreadable calm. You're back, he said quietly. Just passing through, I replied. We stood there in the driveway, the silence stretching between us. Only this time, I wasn't the one shrinking under it. I was the one who owned it. Inside, the house smelled the same, lavender polish and old books. My mother asked if I wanted tea, her voice suddenly sweet. My father smiled faintly and said, We've been meaning to call. Lies tasted familiar here. Hannah's husband, Mark, made polite small talk about my work. He'd seen my interviews online, the conferences, the headlines. You're doing really well for yourself, he said, his voice carrying both admiration and surprise. Better than we expected, my mother added with a half smile. You always were a determined girl. Determined, that word hung in the air like a confession. I let it sit, savoring it. The conversation turned shallow, weather, business, children. But I watched them, all of them, like strangers in a theater I used to cry in. The woman who once begged to belong was gone. This version of me didn't need validation. I had built a life so vast they couldn't measure it. When I left that evening, the sun was setting behind their house, painting it in amber light that made everything look fragile, temporary. My mother walked me out, her tone lighter now. You should visit more often. We'd love to see you. I smiled. Maybe, and then I opened the SUV door, the scent of leather wrapping around me like armor before I drove off. I looked back once, not in longing, but closure. The house that had raised me no longer held power. I did. The next day, the photos started circulating on social media. Me, at a charity gala, standing beside city officials, my company's name on the banners behind us. The same neighbors who once whispered about Ellen's quiet daughter were now reposting my achievements. My mother called again that week, this time with warmth that didn't sound like her. "We're so proud of you," she said. "Your father shows your pictures to everyone. You've really made a name for yourself." I paused. "Funny," I said softly. "I thought I already had one." The silence on the other end was heavy, the kind that carried years of unspoken truth. I ended the call with a polite, "Take care," then set my phone down for the first time. I didn't feel anger, just freedom, because real revenge isn't shouting or proving, it's peace, the kind that comes when you no longer need them to see your worth. But fate had one more scene left, one final twist that would make the silence louder than ever before. It happened on a quiet Sunday morning, one of those still days where the world feels too peaceful to trust. I was back in the city, preparing for the grand opening of my new firm. Months of work, sleepless nights, and sacrifices had led to this moment. The event was all over local news. Rising female entrepreneur opens multi-million-dollar consultancy. I didn't know my parents were watching, but they were. A neighbor had sent them the segment, my face on screen, my company name glowing behind me, the host calling me the powerhouse strategist who built her empire from scratch. My mother, ever the curator of appearances, called that same afternoon. "Sweetheart," she said, her voice trembling with something between awe and guilt. "We saw you on television. We didn't realize how successful you've become." I smiled into the phone. "You never asked. There was a pause. We'd love to come see your office. Maybe take a picture together." For years I had imagined this moment. The apology, the tears, the soft confession of regret. But none of that came. Instead, they wanted proof of proximity, to borrow pride they never earned. I thought of the younger me, the one who stood alone in her wedding dress, crying into silence. And I knew what I had to do. "Sure," I said. "Come next Friday, the new building opens that day." The week passed in a blur. My staff prepared the event. Investors arrived from overseas, and the media swarmed. The building stood tall glass walls reflecting the skyline. My logo etched in silver near the entrance. The moment felt sacred, earned. When my parents arrived, I saw them hesitate by the doorway, small against the towering structure that bore my name. My mother wore her best pearls, my father his old suit. For the first time, they looked nervous. I approached them calmly, dressed in white, a silent echo of the wedding they'd skipped. "Welcome," I said. They smiled, trying to mask discomfort. "This is incredible," my mother whispered. "We're so proud of you." But pride spoken too late feels hollow. I led them through the lobby, where employees greeted me respectfully. "Good morning, Miss Lane." My mother's eyes widened every time she heard it. I could almost hear her thoughts, "Miss Lane. Not our daughter. Not invisible anymore." We entered the main hall, chandeliers above, cameras flashing. My assistant handed me the microphone, and I took the stage. My parents stood in the front row. For a moment, I looked at them, not with pain, but power. "Years ago," I began, my voice steady, "someone told me that success means nothing if you have no one to share it with, but I learned something different. Success is peace. It's the silence after the storm, when you finally realize you never needed their approval to begin with." The audience applauded, not knowing the story beneath my words, but my parents did. My mother's eyes glistened. My father's jaw tightened. They understood every hidden sentence. After the ceremony, photographers swarmed around me. My mother tried to step forward, asking softly, "Can we get a photo, just one?" I looked at her, calm and poised. "Of course," I said. Then I turned to my PR manager. "Please make sure all official photos are for staff and partners only." The message was clear. My mother's smile faltered. My father looked away. For the first time, they felt what I'd felt my entire life, invisible. As the crowd moved around us, my mother whispered, "You've changed," I smiled gently. "No, Mum. I just stopped apologizing for existing." Then I walked away, the sound of applause following me, echoing like thunder in the space between who I was and who I'd become. Outside, my SUV waited under the late afternoon sun. As I opened the door, I caught a glimpse of my parents standing at the entrance, small, quiet, and uncertain. They weren't the giants of my childhood anymore. They were just people, flawed, human, and late. That day, I didn't feel vengeance. I felt closure. Because revenge isn't about making them hurt. It's about making yourself whole again. And as I drove away, the reflection of the glass building shimmered across the SUV's hood. My name shining above the doors, a silent monument to every girl who was ever told she wasn't enough. Weeks passed after the grand opening, but the echo of that day never left me. My parents never called again, not to apologize, not to reconnect, just silence. But this time, silence didn't sting, it soothed. It meant I had finally outgrown their need for approval. One night, I found myself driving again. No destination, just the hum of the engine and the city lights stretching endlessly ahead. I passed neighborhoods that once felt like cages, streets that once held ghosts of who I used to be. And somewhere between one red light and the next, I realized something. Healing doesn't always look like forgiveness. Sometimes it looks like distance. Sometimes it looks like driving past the past without needing to stop. I parked on a quiet overlook, the city below glowing like a constellation of second chances. I thought of the girl I once was, the one who walked down the aisle alone, the one who begged for love that was never given. I whispered into the night, "You made it." Tears came, but not from pain, from pride, from freedom, from knowing I'd built a life so solid that even the people who once broke me couldn't shake it anymore. I never did see my parents much after that. I sent them Christmas cards, polite, distant, beautifully handwritten. I attended Hannah's children's birthdays, always the guest who brought expensive gifts but left before dessert. I wasn't cruel, I was calm. And that calm, that quiet confidence, was the loudest revenge I'd ever served. Years later, when my mother fell ill, Hannah called me. "She asks about you sometimes," she said. "She says she misses you." I paused, looking at my reflection, the woman I'd become. "Tell her," I said softly. "I hope she finds peace." Because I already had that night, I sat on my balcony overlooking the city, my empire glowing beneath me, a glass of wine in hand. Daniel joined me, older now, his hand warm against mine. We didn't need words. The silence between us wasn't empty. It was full of everything we'd built, everything we'd survived, everything they once said I couldn't have. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't chasing anyone's love. I was living inside my own. So to anyone watching this, the ones who were overlooked, underestimated, or unloved, remember this. You don't have to prove your worth to the people who refuse to see it. Let your peace be the proof. Let your silence be the echo that reminds them. You never needed their applause to rise. Because sometimes the sweetest revenge isn't what you say. It's what you become before you scroll. Tell me in the comments, where are you watching from?